Hey guys, Buckeye Bar guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Tonight's date is Monday, October 24th, 2022, and we're going to talk about the big 54-10 victory over Iowa this past weekend. Just give our thoughts of the game. We thought were players of the game on both sides of the ball, any concerns we have, and just different things that we liked, possibly didn't like. And so it should be a pretty straightforward show tonight as we're just going to go over the Iowa stuff. But, I mean, talk about a big win. I mean, a little sluggish maybe in the first half, a little bit off. Iowa's offense absolutely did not put them in any threat to win the game. Um, so, I mean, I think it was a good thing. I know there's some mixed opinions about the first half specifically, but I definitely felt that it was a good that they got punched in the mouth a little bit. The offense did, and they made some adjustments, and they came out and looked pretty good in the second half.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of go back about the Iowa offense. It's still, to me, I feel like it's crazy that it's like the most sure thing I've been this year is that Iowa's offense, of all offenses, are the one that absolutely could do nothing. And they
Yeah.
did nothing. And I mean, that just speaks to, kind of the state of their program. So I don't know. That's probably something they want to fix moving forward. Because I felt more confident that Toledo could score on Ohio State than Iowa could.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sad.
Yeah. I mean, about like different things, getting stuff right and stuff. I mean, we both said Iowa was only going to score 10, and
Mm.
the touchdown is a defensive touchdown. So that was,
Right.
um, that's part
And
of
let's
the
face it,
course.
they shouldn't have got the field goal. I mean, that was a bad call on Tanner McAllister when they called that pass interference to keep that
Yeah.
drive alive.
Yeah. And then you were pretty sure they were going to give up a bunch of turnovers. I think you called it
Six,
six, and
3-3.
yeah, they did. And I was pretty sure that they were going to get a whole boatload of sacks, and they did. And so I guess everybody got something a little bit right. I mean, Iowa's offense is that putrid, and I mean, I don't know. I know it's Kirk's son, but he probably should get his walking papers. I think
Yeah.
we were joking about it during the game. I mean, how does an offensive line, supposed guru, end up being your quarterback's coach? Also, I mean, if he would have just been the offensive line or the offensive line to offensive coordinator, I mean, it's still a bad decision. I get that wrong,
We've
but
seen that firsthand.
what like I mean, both those quarterbacks looked so clueless out there, and like, so I don't know. Like, he's obviously doesn't know how to teach him anything. So, like, yeah, I think Iowa probably should tell Kirk that it's I wouldn't necessarily fire him. He's been there for a long time, but just be like, maybe it's time we hang him up a little bit and let's go get a new coach. So,
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. But to Ohio State's credit, now they played a really horrible offense that we thought couldn't do anything, and they didn't let them do anything. So, I mean, their defense did their
yeah,
part there. Of course, you would like their defense to get a better challenge. I mean, I know I would.
yeah,
We're certainly probably going to see one this week. We'll talk about that on Thursday. But it was something that you hate it because this is the part of your team you're really wondering if how much better you truly are.
yeah,
But I mean, you take it. You definitely don't. What makes you feel better, knowing like a bad offense did okay against you, or a bad offense did terrible against you? So I mean, obviously, holding them to where they're supposed to hold them, feels good. It definitely gives a confidence boost. They were all over the field. They did great. Offense, you had talked about, clunkiness in the
Yeah.
first half. Um, kind of felt similar to last year at times with predictability on the run game, and they haven't been that way this year. So I don't know if it was like when Ryan Day gets a defense with a pulse against
Yeah.
him that he starts, clinching up a little bit. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was like, hey, we're not going to show them anything. Hey, this is what I like to run the most. So let's really take this time when there's an offense that can't do anything against us. Let's take time to try to, perfect this part of the run game. I don't know, but it didn't look good. And you want it to look good, especially because, there was times last year that really would have helped them in games if their run game
Yeah.
got moving. With that being said, the games that they couldn't get their run game going last year, it was like a barely a two-score win against Penn State. It was a one-score game against Nebraska. So, I mean, this is a 44-point win. Of course, those offenses were probably better than what you faced against this
Yeah.
Iowa team. But yeah, I mean, it didn't look great at times, but still, I mean, you can't find too much in a 44-point win to cry about
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
a top five defense.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So we'll get into. Let's. We'll keep going with the offense. To start thoughts. So going off the running game, what you kind of said. I mean, there is concerns there right now, but I would say that like I'm not ready to say that I'm completely concerned yet. Like part of me feels like this is kind of like the first defensive line that could really punch the offensive line in the mouth, and they needed that. They just needed to maybe to be to go up against something like that, and now you got stuff on tape because whatever the things Iowa's did, Penn State will probably try to duplicate it, and Michigan will try to duplicate it,
Mm.
and possibly with better athletes. I know that Iowa's got at least on the defensive side of the ball, they got some pretty good athletes. I mean, Campbell is a hell of a middle linebacker. Um, so
But
I
the
mean,
guys on Penn State and Michigan are better.
yeah, I mean that's how I definitely feel. So they gave a blueprint. So I think Ryan Day, he's an offensive guru. He will probably have a good understanding how he would think probably defenses are going to try to attack him now. So going forward against especially in Happy Valley here coming up, and against Michigan at the end of the year. Um, so that's one thing. I think you know, and I didn't listen to any of the press post game press conference. So I mean, I heard Dave seemed a little upset, and obviously that's a good thing. He should be upset, I guess, in part. But like part of me also wonders is yes, they ran away from the run, but maybe if they were playing a better offensive team, they would have tried to continue and establish the run in the second half if they felt like the offense needed it. Like part of me is wondering because Iowa's offense was just so inept and Ohio State's defense was just playing out of their minds that maybe he didn't like what he was seeing in the passing game, not being able to get strikes down the field in that first half. So maybe he just decided that, there's no way in hell Iowa's coming back. And obviously they weren't coming back. I mean, Ohio State scored enough points in the first half to win the game. So maybe he, I mean, I think everybody felt, I mean, I did not think that Iowa was like maybe they had one more touchdown in them, but I didn't think it was going to be much more than that. That offense looked so god awful in the first
No,
half
and
that
I think
maybe
that. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying maybe somewhere he was just thinking that what, yes, we need to start establishing the run, but CJ's looking very frustrated out there. I want to get some of the receivers going. Um, and this team ain't going to come back against me. So let's work on the passing game, get some field goods there, and then come practice here that Iowa's defense is going to put enough on us on tape that we might find better running abilities, ways to attack that defense better, running the ball, come practice and after the film studies.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna like talk about kind of the run predictability and issues, and then I'm gonna go off into something else that's related. Um, but so I still like. I called it too. Like when they motioned out of the shotgun to the pistol, I'm like, oh, they're going to run a stretch run here, and it got stuffed immediately. I mean, I think it was an obvious play that they ran. They were doing the same thing when they would go pistol. They were doing stretch runs, and the running backs kind of like they were doing a little bit too much last year. Were getting uncomfortable with the stretch run. Like they would see a guy given push on the offensive line, and they would bounce it outside immediately, and that only hurt them. So we did see too much of that again. And then if they do go shotgun, it seems like they still kind of just do like a straight up offensive line look, zone blocking, whatever it may be. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but it's still that kind of that same elongated motion where it's like zone read type of look, and CJ's not going anywhere with the ball. And
Yeah.
I think that they got to do some more stuff. Which again, I don't know. Maybe there is a bag of tricks there that he's like, it's not worth showing against Iowa. Let's see if we
Yeah.
can establish this part of our game, because I can't remember. I think it might have been Bill Landis talking about this earlier. That play that Trey Henderson cut back in and he fell, and like he could probably would have had a touchdown if he kept his footing on that. They pulled the center and guard on that, and then they ran it again later in the game and they got like 6 yards on it. So I mean the run worked the two times that they did it.
Yeah.
They just didn't do it often. And I don't know, maybe that was like to get some confidence, like, okay, we're done messing around with these guys. And then eventually they're like, they can't score on us. Let's not show everyone what we can do. Like,
Yeah.
the bag's there. Let's keep it there for when we need it.
Yeah. I would say that before you get to your second point that you wanted to make, that I think that like on that stretch run that they were shutting down and stuff, and they did run that a lot of the pistol. You got to think at some point here that there's somewhere in that in the playbook that they're gonna try to run that as a counter at some point, and push them back the other way, like make three or four of the offensive linemen look like they're making the stretch, but you don't necessarily see the guard that's pulling back the other way,
Yeah.
and they try to do a counter. Um, I mean, you guy would think something like that's got to be somewhere in the playbook, but it just seems like over 2 years that they've never really tried to run it.
Yeah, and there's a counter somewhere in their playbook. I mean, I know just from who Justin Fry is as an offensive line coach, and just seeing what they've done with pulling guards a few times this year. There's a counter play somewhere in that offensive playbook, so it'll come. Second point, and in no way am I advocating for C.J. Stroud to be Braxton Miller, to be Justin Fields, to be Terrell Pryor. He only helps himself though if he takes free yardage. And I understand he has this thing in his head where he's like, well, I'm trading 8 yards for 20 yards or whatever it may be. But the thing is, like, there's still that last component of that, the pass. Can someone break it up? Can someone intercept it? Is it going to get dropped? Wind affects it, whatever the hell it may be. There's that extra component. You got to say, like, eventually you got to be like, hey, let me take the 5 yards that are just right there in front of me. Because for this team to be the Death Star, they need the chains to keep moving. They got to be able to run tempo. And that only helps them passing because you'll get less guys turning their backs, covering his receivers. And that helps them running too because it keeps their offense in motion, keeps them ahead of schedule.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that sometimes, and you say that you're trading 8 yards for 20. I mean, there is times that there's 20 yards there, like that your receivers have ran off the guys so far that I mean he could easily pick up 20 yards on one of those. And I get it. Maybe is he self conscious a little bit that he doesn't want to take a big unnecessary hit. I don't know. I mean,
I don't think the guy's been hit that much in his career that he should
eh,
be worried about it.
I mean, I don't know. It could be somewhere stuck in the back of his head. I'm not saying that it isn't. I wish he would at least once, twice a game, just do it because that just makes somebody have to think about that. And if that means that they have to keep a safety or a linebacker out of coverage and just closer to the line of scrimmage, just to make sure that he can't peel off that's one less guy in coverage. So like
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah, I wish he would definitely. I definitely wish he would do that. that's becoming it's a concern. Um, for me, I think the biggest concern I have right now, and it's kind of like where you were seeing some of the predictability in the run game. I I was seeing in just in the hard times when they got down, and not even necessarily in the red zone from like the 30-yard line on
Yeah.
that they got some easy like turnovers and they had a lot of short fields. And Ryan Day did say something. I did catch I did catch a clip of what he said after the game, and I kind of didn't like it how he phrased it. And I get where he was coming from, but I just wish he wouldn't have said it out loud. Is that against Iowa's defense, you're thinking about how do you string series together, and they had a lot of short fields, and that's just a very hard time to you know they force you to when they pack the field up like that, it's just much harder to score on them, and it kind of took them a little bit out of their playbook, and and that might be the case, but you got to assume that stuff could happen. I mean, it can happen against good teams, and yeah, a good defense will when it gets into tighter areas, it's harder to score on them. So you have to have plays in the playbook to be able to score it. I mean, you can't dictate that every series is going to be a 70, 80 yard, drive that,
Right.
there's going to be opportunities that, you might have a couple 30, 40 yard fields in a game because your defense is just playing really good or you get a good punt return or whatever. So, I mean, you got to be ready for it.
Well, I mean, and Bill Landis actually made this point. I know this one for sure. Bill Landis from Rivals. He had said that he doesn't think it's starting too close to the other end zone is a good enough excuse for not being productive on an offense. And I agree with him. I agree with you. I mean, that was stuff like that we saw that last year when the field got shorter, and we've seen that actually in Day's career. When the field gets shorter, he doesn't always have the best play calling going.
Which,
Some leaves a lot to be desired.
like, and it's just the one thing, like, and I don't understand. And maybe it's like he gets to a point that maybe he gets too scared in that situation of being repetitive. But like the one things I've always known that it's worked for him when they do it is when they do that rollout and the they uh, the receiver comes back and he catches a touchdown pass at the pylon. I mean, how many times? I mean, that used to be a Chris Olave, and I know he dropped a couple here and there, but that was a Chris Olave go-to over the years. And that a Buka or Marv? It was Marv, right? Who caught?
Marvin,
Yeah,
yeah, Marv had
yeah.
it.
So they did it in this game, and it's like until somebody proves that they can stop that play, I'd run that play over and over and over again. And that's in that one with Rossi. They've done stuff like that before. It works. So
Well, and I think he caught a much better game in the second half. It was just
yeah,
first half. I mean, that just it left a lot to be desired offensively when you start. I mean, they just you start in that great a field position so much of the game, but they are a good defense, and I think you're happy going to the half up 26-10 against
yeah,
them.
yeah. It's just, I mean, it's nitpicking. I mean, I understand. It's just some stuff that could come down later in the year
Oh yeah,
that
you're
could
gonna
be
play
against
better
your.
teams.
I mean, but and we'll get to the defense. I mean, I think what a lot of Buckeye fans are kind of missing when some of the criticism I'm seeing, and I know people could say, well, it's just Iowa, but they've showed a lot this year that this is a much different defense than it was last year,
Right.
and so that I feel a lot more confident if if the Buckeyes offense is stubbing their toes a little bit that they have a defense that will keep them in games
Right. Yeah.
and um but so I mean those are the concerns on our offense. I mean just a couple things that we liked. I mean obviously the second half, like I said, I liked that they were able to make the adjustments that they made, and they had a much crisper, first second half compared to the first half. And I told you this, during the game again to a lot of Buckeye fans, kind of worrying and stuff like that. I watched a lot of football on Saturday, and basically, I know more eyeballs were probably on that Clemson Syracuse game at noon at a point. I'm sure Ohio State's ratings were very good and probably even the best ratings at the noon window, I'm assuming. But I'm sure there was a lot of flipping back and forth. And that obviously in the second half was the more interesting of the two games was the Syracuse Clemson. And there's always there's a studio show before every game. There's a studio show at halftime. There's studio shows at the end of games. I saw that the Ohio State ESPN headlines. I don't know how, and the Fox headlines. I don't know how many times on Saturday. Nobody said the Ohio State struggled. Yeah, it was all Ohio State looked really good in a complete victory against Iowa. And they showed a couple good highlights of it. So I mean, and that's kind of when you're playing a game like that, that's all you can kind of ask for in the
Mhm.
national. You're still the number two team in the country. You didn't get docked anywhere, and then they actually gained a first place vote. So so I
Yeah.
mean,
No, I mean, I totally agree with everything you just said right there. Just, would love to see the run game be a little bit more complete moving forward, but well, we got time. It'll happen.
yeah. And your player of the game for offense.
Um, I kind of felt like you could almost go with all three of the receivers. I think by the end of the day, CJ actually was the offensive player of the game with his second half, but I'm kind of challenging myself to go with people that are not CJ Stroud. So I said Emeka Igbuka, he had six receptions, 80 yards and a touchdown. He caught a pass that really started to change the like momentum and tempo going with the pass game. CJ lasered a ball to him going up the seam, and he found a way to catch the ball without getting his head knocked off by a safety coming down on him. The next play, CJ makes an incredible throw, an incredible catch by Marvin Harrison Jr. And then the final play out of three, CJ lasered the ball over Igbuka in the cornerback's shoulder in the back of the end zone, where only Igbuka can make an over the shoulder catch. So I think a lot of the guys get credit for it. I think he had the best game out of the receiver, so I went with him as my offensive player of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it. It's just to pick any of the receivers, and not necessarily that he had the best game, but I'm gonna go with Fleming. I think the guy has really quietly showed himself that they have three really really good receivers, and even without Jackson Smith, that's a very dangerous. You don't get a lot of teams where you got three unbelievable wide receivers on it, and I know there's been a lot of question if they're getting separation and stuff like that. And yeah, they maybe need to be a little bit more physical with defensive backs if the defensive backs are going to try to bump them at the line of scrimmage, bump them back. But on that play right there that Fleming had that big touchdown, I mean, he had enough separation to catch that ball and score while running it. CJ put it in the perfect position,
Yep.
and he went right across the safety's face, and there was no, and that's always the save. And when you're even, when we're even, I'm leaving or whatever, and he comes right across the face, and he was gone at that point, and you just knew as soon as you saw it, as soon as you saw it happening, you just knew CJ just had to put a good pass throw on it because it was six, and and
Yeah, yeah. Fleming's been quite the pleasant surprise this year for sure. I mean, all that guy's doing since he's been healthy is catching touchdowns,
yeah,
and that's like all Marv does is catch touchdowns. So I mean, they got good problems when it comes to receivers for sure.
yeah. And just one last thing on offense before we switch over to the defense. Um, on JSN, so is there concerns there about did he re-aggravate the hamstring? It was a little nerve-wracking seeing that in the game. I am going to take some of. I was listening a little bit another rivals guy today on the radio this morning, Austin Ward. He did say he was paying a lot of attention to Jackson Smith while he was on the sidelines, and he did get looked at real quick, but then he was right with Hartline and Day, and it seemed like he could go back in if he wanted to go back in. So maybe it was just Ohio State being overly cautious, and they did, I mean, which was probably kind of a lie that was the pitch count right there. But you know, I think it was probably the necessary pitch count. So I mean, we'll see going forward. Obviously, later in the week, what the availability reports are saying and stuff like that. But you know, according to at least what Austin said he was seeing, it seemed like that Jackson Smith could have went back into the game.
No, I mean that's definitely reassuring, and I heard that too. That he kept his helmet on and he was with Day and Heartline the whole time. So seemed like he could have done it, but glad he didn't. He didn't need to.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to move over to defensive?
Yeah, let's hit the defense.
All right. I mean, do you want to just go defensive player of the game? I don't think. Do we really got to do a whole breakdown or?
Um, right now, I'm not going to say I see any concerns. I just we kind of talked about this later, and I don't think we're going to necessarily see it until Michigan. We might see a little bit more at Penn State, but we haven't really played a complete offense yet to really get a good
Yeah.
feel. But I mean, in college football, who really gets to see that in a week out? So I don't know if that's really like
I
special to us or not, but like
I think Penn State and Maryland give you something to look at,
different. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, I think it's more complete with Michigan as far as talent wise, not necessarily what they execute or what they try to do. But I think between the three teams, you see great athletes, you see a pretty good passing game, pretty good running game, you see a really good offensive line, really good running game. So
Yeah.
I think you can piece together a lot of info, but with the three of them, with Michigan possibly being the hardest test of the three.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I'm still interesting to see, when you talked about that last game of the year, if Ohio's obviously we have a lot more time to delve into that as the year
Yeah.
goes. But if Ohio State does get them out of their comfort zone, and not letting them run the ball at will like they did last year, and it seems like how they've been doing this year, that is Michigan a complete enough offense that they can win after that point? Because I know that, yeah, we would like to run the ball more, but I feel confident in our offensive game plan. Uh, even if the running game isn't slightly working, you know, that we can play with our
Mhm.
passing game. And actually, I feel confident for whatever reason, if Stroud was off and the receivers weren't really having a good game, that I think as a one-dimensional team that we could still run the ball if we're really forced to, and and you got to play smash power football. It's just interesting to me if we'll see if Michigan can do that at the end of the year. The one thing I did like about this, what I saw from the defense, it was just that Knowles was kind of showing a couple different things. He was running a three down lineman, three linebacker set. We haven't seen that this year.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
had been run. He ran a lot more four down linemen with their hands in the ground that we've seen all year. So it's like now he's kind of like playing a little bit. Like I'm going to show you guys a lot of different fronts, and you know, let's put a lot of things on paper for our teams to practice.
And he almost used like a third linebacker at times as came down over, the back side of the defensive end, almost like a down, like a fifth lineman.
Yeah.
So I mean, they did a lot of interesting stuff in the game, and yeah, Knowles. I mean, he's shown that he has a bag of tricks as well on defense. So I mean, like, there's not a ton you could take from this game. I mean, I laughed like they split out their tight ends and they did a bubble screen with the tight end when they needed like 12 yards to gain or something like that. It was just like these guys have no imagination, or the imagination that they have is just really stupid. Like, why would you? I mean, you got to have someone on your team that's faster than that.
Yeah. I think probably the thing that got me the most frustrated about the defense, and it was late in the second half. It's just that when when you know that there's obvious like they might run a draw, they
Yeah,
ran it
that was
twice.
two bad draws right in a row. Yeah,
Uh,
that was bad.
yeah, and it's like hey, this could be a draw, and then like they did it the first time's one thing, they ended up getting a fourth and one because he fumbled it and had to come back to where he fumbled it at. But the second one, he goes out and gets another first down on it, like just what is a couple plays like the next
Yeah.
series or a couple plays later, I don't remember, but it's like hey, I mean, I guess that's something you got to look at on the you don't want some team to get a stupid first down because you weren't ready for a draw. So like,
Yeah, and I get the reasoning behind being super, aggressive and trying to pressure the quarterback and blitzing, but at the same time, it's like they can't do anything offensively, man. They got third and forever. Just freaking, stay back. Stay, try to get the pressure with four.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just the last thing on the just the before we get into just a couple of things I want to say, just a couple of things I'm impressed in before we get to the player of the game, and then maybe you can list off a couple. Um, is this that I really liked? Again, I'm liking when what this whole his idea of five defensive backs is safeties. I've said this to you before. It's just it makes things so unique because the safety, if you have good safeties, they're the most versatile guys on the
Yeah.
defense and they can do a lot. And these guys do a lot. McAllister does a lot, Ransom's doing a lot, Proctor's doing a lot, Hitman's doing a lot. And it's like, they're just out there making plays. He's able to show so many different looks with them. He can bring eight guys up at the box and still have a safety back. He could you know, he could show eight guys in the box and drop a second safety. He could have two safeties back and bring one up at the last minute. Like there's just a lot of things that they can do with them, and he's been doing a lot with them. I mean, they're showing so many different formations and you know coverages and stuff, and he can just do so much. And the one thing he really hasn't done a lot yet with them, and I'm really expecting this to start happening down the stretch. He hasn't really blitzed those safeties. He's blitzed his corners a few times, but he
Yeah.
hasn't really blitzed his safeties. And I'm expecting to start seeing that a little bit as some of these bigger games are coming down the stretch. Just to throw things, wrinkles in that you haven't seen. Um, and then just a nice shout out. I was very impressed. I mean, I've been impressed all year with the linebackers, and to the defensive line to a point. I really just loved how the whole. I mean, Iowa, yeah, they're Iowa. They couldn't do anything, but that front seven made sure they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
They were everywhere on those guys, and they were hitting the quarterbacks, and they were, getting into passing lanes, and making him make mistakes, and so just super impressed. I loved all the pressure I saw from them, and I mean, yeah, Iowa's Iowa, but hopefully, you don't know what kind of boost that could have given some of the confidence for that defensive line to really, come down the stretch and really, shut some teams down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's well, yeah. I mean, your front seven just dominated this game. So yeah, I agree with you. You needed it. I mean, your front seven didn't always play the greatest football last year. I mean, it wasn't. I think it got amplified how bad they wore based off of that Michigan game. Because I
Yep.
mean, they were a decent unit outside of that. But this was the type of game that last year they didn't always look the best with a team that wanted to just go punch them in the mouth, and they looked really, really good in this game. And Iowa's offense sucks. We've established that. There's nothing's going to change that. No one can say anything that's going to change the fact that Iowa doesn't have a good offense and they are coached very, very poorly on offense. But
Yep.
our defense did what they were supposed to do and they
Yeah.
dominated.
You did what you needed to do. Yeah, that was what you were expected to do, and they exceeded
Right.
expectations.
They
Yeah,
exceeded
so
expectations. So that was awesome.
I mean, there was
Um,
a
Good.
I think so. Just player of the game. I think we probably have the same guy in mind. So maybe if you wanted to say a couple things for the guy, I think, and maybe throw a second person out there, and I'll throw a second person out there. But
The guy that I was originally picking
yeah,
or that I picked Zach Harrison.
yeah, I think
Okay.
Zach.
So, I mean, Zach didn't have like the most outrageous statistical, output of a game, but this has been his career. He's not a sack machine, but he does everything else so well. Sets the edge, stops the run, gets pressure on the quarterback. Sometimes a step too slow, but he gets pressure. And now he's playing loose. He's almost like the energizer of that defensive line. You see him trying to get the crowd pumped up. He's trying to get the other guys pumped up. Like this is I think he's just in a place finally that he feels more comfortable just not having to be Chase Young, that he's being Zach Harrison and he's being disruptive. I mean, he only had two tackles, but they were two tackles for loss. One was a sack. He had a forced fumble on the sack. He had a hurry. He had a tipped ball. The one thing actually that kind of got me the just in my head the most about this is he only had 20 snaps in the game. And I don't know. I mean, maybe how many offensive plays did Iowa even run, to be honest? I mean, they turned the ball over so many times. So maybe that was a lot of snaps. But um, Mike Hall, he dominated Michigan State on like 7 snaps. And I just think that there's a point like, man, we got to stop messing around with all these rotations. Like, you got a best five. Like they need to see the field as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because
No,
I think numbers that you're missing start getting there if those guys are on the field more.
yeah.
Like that. At least that's what I feel.
And I think I agree with that. I think they're still maybe in a little bit of a rock and a hard place. They want to keep everybody as fresh as possible, and that's definitely helps you do it. But a couple of the other guys, like I mean, Jaron Cage is starting to impress me some. That
Yeah,
and same with Taron. I mean, Taron Vincent's look good. So like where I was getting a little frustrated earlier in the year that I thought they were maybe letting Cage in a little too much, but I thought he's been quietly putting together a bad season. Baptiste had a pretty good game in this
yeah,
game too. So like they all did good enough that they should all. I thought they were fine playing, but um, yeah, no, Harrison was definitely my player of the game for everything you said. I mean, I don't know if you have a second guy just to throw out there. I mean, mine was. I'm still going with Tommy. The dude's like literally all over the field. I mean, you can make an argument for.
it's-
I mean, between Tanner and McAllister too. I mean, but Tommy, I'm gonna say Tommy. That
what
guy
about Coach
is
Simon?
Cody Simon. There was a lot of guys I was impressed with in this game, but yeah, they were. I was nice seeing him out there. Steele impressed the hell out of me. I mean, he had
Yeah,
some nice tackles behind the line of scrimmage. For tackles for loss. So like, I'm just I really like where this defense is at right now. I would like. I just wish college football wasn't college football. That you play such a wide variety of just bad teams that are just they only have so many good players because there's just some people I would like to kind of shut up. Just be like, okay, see this defense is really really good. I
yeah,
think this defense is good enough to win them the national championship with this offense. And they're at a point now where I'm really having confidence that this defense, if the offense does, if you get into a big game against Michigan or Alabama or Clemson or Georgia, where there's some defenses that might be able to slow your offense down some, that this defense can slow their offense down some, and you're not gonna get put behind by 2 or 3 touchdowns, um, and you're trying to claw back into it, where it can help your offense really settle into a game.
yeah. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but your defense might be just as good as those great defenses that you just mentioned. But thing is, Ohio State, outside of Michigan, possibly Georgia, which Georgia I've seen their struggles on the line, but Ohio State's got the best offensive line out of all those teams. So, it's like I don't know if you can go blow for blow with them because there's a good
Yeah.
chance that they're going to get through Buckeyes are going to get through your offensive line and you might not have the same success.
I've watched a little less of Georgia this year. I have watched a lot of Alabama, and I've actually watched a lot of Michigan. And I actually think, you know, Ohio State and Michigan have the two best offensive
I
lines
agree.
in the
I agree.
country,
Yeah.
and like so, so that's my praise to Michigan for the week. But I actually do like their offensive line, and I think they actually might be a better offensive line than they were last year. And so,
I
and
agree.
that's saying a lot. So, that so.
Yeah. And I'll just kind of finish my Iowa thoughts on CJ Stroud ended up with 66% passing, 286 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception that wasn't really intercepted. So as bad as people think CJ might have played at points of that game, that's still a offensive quarterback performance that anyone would take against Iowa.
Yeah, agree.
Anyone would be more than happy with. Like that's a great performance against Iowa.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to throw out there for tonight?
No, I mean I felt good about the game mostly. I mean, like I said, there's some stuff in the first half that I wish like shorter field. I would have loved to see some touchdowns out of that. But hell, I mean, we cannot finish this episode without saying like props to Noah Ruggles for going 4 for 4 on field
Yeah.
goals. Like he
He's
has not
always
been used a lot this year.
Yeah, and he proves himself. He proved himself last year as a field goal kicker. Yeah, he's proven himself this year. Knock on wood, that he doesn't hit any bad stretches or anything like that. But you never know. I mean, I know this is new age college football. I grew up in the Trussell era. That you never know when you're gonna
Right.
need a field goal kicker out there to go win you a big game as time's expiring or something like that. So you know.
Yeah. And then it sounds like starting long snapper Bradley Robinson was actually lost for the year. Got hurt covering a punt, so that sucks because that's just a huge guy in special teams. You can't lose your long snapper. Hopefully
Yeah.
the backup's ready to rock and roll on that, but definitely a tough loss for a team. Unsung type of guy that you don't want to move forward without. So hopefully he's not missed as far as play on the field, but that is a tough one to replace.
Yeah, definitely agree. Alrighty, I think we're good for tonight, so let's get on out of here.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for stopping in tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
IO.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.
IO.